are watching Okasa TV.
This is Okasa TV in UK standard. Okasa TV is whereby they tell you the truth of everything, especially look at the Ukraine, what is happening.
Welcome to our channel. In Russia, things are getting worse in the Russian army, and it's getting out of the control of the Kremlin. Putin's dreams of false victory strike Putin in the face as the drunk, uneducated, and depressed soldiers of the Russian army kneel and surrender to Ukraine in the shadow of the victories of the Ukrainian warriors. Let's go to the bottom of the bottle with the tragicomic surrender and retreat of the Russian army, while intoxicated with Ukrainian victories. Let's dive deep into the frontline glory of the Ukrainian warriors who depressed the Russians with their Slava Ukraine war cries. Ukraine has carried out multiple rapid counterattacks over the past 6 weeks, forcing Russian forces to retreat towards the border. Despite the fact that the Russian army recruited 300,000 volunteer Russian citizens with the declaration of mobilization, it still has to maintain its passive position in the face of the heroic Ukrainian army. Russian leader Vladimir Putin could not hide his amazement at the incredible, violent Ukrainian army operations. Because Zelensky's lions have pinned the Russian troops especially on the southern front. On the southern front where the breathtaking Ukrainian operations take place, the soldiers of the Russian army cannot even raise their heads. Not only the Russian leader but all the states of the world are following this situation with amazement. The Ukrainian army is taking back the occupied Ukrainian lands one by one, dealing blow after blow while stunning the Russian troops. Russian leader Vladimir Putin accelerated the sending of volunteer citizens who were recruited into the Russian army with the decision of mobilization to stop the irresistible Ukrainian advance to Ukraine. Vladimir Putin wants to at least reduce Ukrainian pressure on the southern front, but voluntary Russian citizens cannot contribute to the Ukraine war as much as Putin expects. The reason is that volunteer citizens who are included in the Russian army with the decision of mobilization are sent to Ukraine after undergoing a very short and insufficient military training. That's why, in the conflicts in Ukraine, the first soldiers to die in the Russian army are the volunteers who join the Russian army with mobilization. For these reasons, Russian local people do not want to go to Ukraine to fight. As a result of these failed policies implemented by Russia, the heroic Ukrainian army succeeded in liberating 6,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. In addition, the Russian troops had to withdraw from both the northeastern and southern fronts as the Ukrainian fighters locked up a significant area east of the Oskil River in the Kharkiv region. Given the pressure of Ukrainian heroes to the east and south, Putin's forces have little choice. Especially the situation of the Russian troops in the south of Ukraine is deplorable. 15,000 Russian soldiers are trapped in the western part of the Dnipro River in the Kherson region in the south of Ukraine. Yes, you heard right. Thanks to the successful operations of the Ukrainian heroes, 15,000 Russian soldiers pushed from Kherson to the Dnipro River are desperately waiting. Russian leader Vladimir Putin now has to make a very risky decision. This shocking development, which turned the world agenda upside down, put the Russian administration in a very serious crisis period. The 15,000 Russian soldiers on the western side of the Dnipro River seem to have no choice but to surrender to the Ukrainian army. Soldiers in this area may try to move to Kherson in the southwest and try to protect the city, but that's not a good option either. 8 towns have already been liberated in the last 24 to 48 hours, and the rate of withdrawal of Russian troops from these settlements is remarkably rapid. And when troops are forced to retreat under these conditions, very good commanders are needed to rally forces. Since there are not many commanders left in the Russian army to provide these qualities, the chances of the Russian administration are gradually decreasing. Looking at the situation in the east, the Ukrainian troops are making new gains. The Zelensky Lions are pretty close to recapturing the cities of Svatove and Kreminna. Svatove and Kreminna are 2 very strategic cities for the connection point of the Ukrainian Highway 66. The connection point of the Highway 66 is currently in the artillery range of the Ukrainian heroes, so the Ukraine-Russia war is getting hotter. While Russian leader Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin administration are considering this decision on the edge of the abyss, Ukrainian troops continue to organize new attacks on 4 Ukrainian regions, which were annexed by the Russians. The heroic Ukrainian army increased its counterattacks in the Luhansk region and managed to push the invading troops in this region towards the border. While the Ukrainian army, advancing quite decisively in Luhansk, was seriously disturbing the Russian leader, the Kremlin administration made a shocking statement. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that the Russian army's decision to withdraw in the face of the advances of the Ukrainian army will not affect the annexation. Also known as Little Putin Peskov, these 4 Ukrainian regions will belong to Russia forever. Considering the progress of the Ukrainian heroes and their achievements in these regions, the verdict of the Kremlin spokesman Peskov's statements seems quite invalid, because the Russian army lost the most in Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Luhansk, and Kherson. For this reason, it's quite thought-provoking that the Russian administration is still so ambitious for these 4 Ukrainian regions. Russian leader Vladimir Putin had already been disgraced in the world political arena due to the defeat in Kherson, 24 hours after the so-called annexation decision. The Kremlin administration's adherence to the so-called annexation decision is considered only as a distraction. This so-called annexation decision is not surprising, since the customary policy of the Russian administration is to cover up the failures. Last week, the towns of Novovoskresenske, Novoharihorivka, and Petropavlivka, northeast of the city of Kherson, were liberated. Russian leader Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin administration were disgraced once again with the liberation of these 3 towns. But despite these losses, Vladimir Putin had the courage to decide to take control of Europe's largest nuclear power plant located in Zaporizhia. The last time Putin took such radical decisions, it always ended in frustration. Now the Russian leader who has increased his gamble is making bets that are very difficult to return. Even a single wrong decision at the moment could even knock the Russian leader out of his seat as well as losing the war. Because the Ukraine-Russia war has reached such a level that the heroes of Ukraine can pull the string in a single mistake of Russia, thanks to the support it receives from the United States and its Western allies. As a result of these pressures, Russian leader Vladimir Putin will again put the nuclear weapon trump card on the table. Backed into a corner, the Russians have so far either displayed a threatening stance with nuclear weapons or blackmailed Europe by using Russian natural gas. But in both cases, it was Russia that was the loser. The leader, Vladimir Putin, who imposed sanctions on Germany on natural gas, had to ease the energy sanctions he had imposed on Germany because he needed financial support for the Ukraine war. In other words, we draw the following conclusion from this issue that, although the Russian administration pursues an aggressive and threatening policy, it eventually has to settle down. The Russian army is no more than a crippled man and can't even fight with a cane. The unbelievable mediocrity of Putin's generals and the euphoria of the Russians before they even got to the front set them on an irreversible path in Ukraine. The Russian army and the Kremlin strategies in Ukraine are now exhausted, and they're sending new soldiers to die tragicomically in Ukraine. Probably the war between Russia and Ukraine will be referred to as the second biggest war of the 21st century, and it will likely be a transition to a new era. In this new era, there may be neither Putin nor the Russian Federation, but Ukraine will certainly be. We'll be back with hot developments. Stay tuned. You can be notified of new videos by clicking the bell icon. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Stay cool for now.
No station can give you everything about Ukraine and Russia stuff. But when you tune into Okasa TV, we'll give you the real, we'll give you the truth, we'll give you everything about Okasa TV. Okasa TV will educate you. Okasa TV is unbelievable. Tune in and you get it, you're happy. Okasa TV.